This is a video walkthrough for this 2021 Cherokee Alpha Wolf Limited. So on the front here, you do have a leash latch for your pets, which is pretty neat. All the compartment doors on the unit are going to be equipped with these little magnetic catches. So you'll be able to just flip the compartment door up and the magnet will hold that door up. So you do have a pass-through compartment here. We'll get to what those two manual cranks there go to here in a second. You have a light on either side with a push button here in the middle. So that crank there in the front, the first one you can see, is for your stabilizer jacks located on all four corners of the unit. These are meant to stabilize the unit, to add 4 points of additional contact to the ground, to make this thing sturdy so it feels like it's actually mounted to the ground rather than sitting on springs. And then the other one you see there, the one in the back, the further one, that is for the manual crank option on your electric tongue jack here in the front. So the electric tongue jack does have a button for the light, and then it has the other button here to raise or lower the tongue of the trailer here. And then underneath this cover is where you're going to find that nut way down in there for the manual crank option. Your trailer 7-way is located right here. The silver cable you see runs down. Let's see if I can get a shot of this. Runs down to that little black box right there. And that silver cable is attached to a pin that goes inside that black box. What that is your emergency breakaway cable. So what that does, in the event of emergency, you'll have this end of the cable hooked to the back of your truck with either a carabiner clip or a D-ring. In the same location, you'll have your safety chains. So in the event of an emergency where this were to ever come uncoupled from your truck, it will pull this cable, which will engage your trailer brakes, allowing the trailer to stop itself. Again, that's in case of an emergency, but you still need to have that hooked up every time. If you forget, you want to hook everything else, you leave this hooked up, you pull away, you pull that pin. That's not a big deal. Just make sure you unhook it, put that pin back in there. It's not a single time use thing or anything like that. So if you accidentally pull it out, just make sure you put that pin all the way back in there so it disengages those brakes and you can pull the trailer safely again. So your safety chains here on the front, they have this little mount that they clip to for storage, but you do have a left and a right. So the left and the right, you always want your right safety chain to go on the left side of your truck and the left one to go on the right side of the truck. That way it creates like an X, so it creates a little cradle. So in that worst case event where this trailer were to ever come uncoupled, it will catch the nose of the trailer. When it comes time to actually hook up to this with your truck, you'll get your truck back under here, you'll lower this down onto your hitch, then you'll pick this up. You see these little ears right here, they rest just like that, holding that in there. And then to remove, just the opposite motion, pull that back, and it does rest up in there, allowing this to be open for safe removal. Underneath this cover right here, you have two 20-gallon propane cylinders. They're held on by this bar here, so you have to make sure you remove this nut, pull that off there if you ever want to have these tanks filled. There is a valve on the top of each tank. You have to have that in the open position to operate them. And then you do have your regulator right here. So the regulator will be red if there's no gas, and it will turn green when there is propane flowing to that regulator. It does have this little directional supply arrow, so you can choose which tank you're going to draw from. This is an auto switchover regulator, so what that means is that if you leave the arrow pointing whichever tank, if you leave the valves open on each tank, it'll automatically drain the tank that the arrow is facing and then switch over and start drawing from the tank the arrow is opposite of, which is pretty convenient. Underneath this black box right here is your 12-volt battery. 12-volt battery powers things on the inside like your lights, your slide out, your awning, and your refrigerator. When you're plugged in with the battery disconnect turned to the on position, you will automatically charge this battery through the shore power, so you won't have to worry about that battery dying on you. You do have these docking lights on the front, controlled by this switch right here. These tags here, this is your manufacturer information. It has things like your VIN, the gross vehicle weight rating, as well as your tire inflation information. You always want to double check that before airing up the tires or loading this thing up. This compartment is just the other side of that pass-through compartment. Again, you have a light on this side as well. So right here, down here, you have your sewage outlet. So labeled up above the belt line molding there, above the J-wrap, you do have labels which indicate which handle is which. So when you dump the tanks, there is no confusion. You always want to make sure that if you see there's a little cap hanging, you put that cap on anytime you're not dumping to keep any debris out of that tube. And then when it comes time to empty your tanks, you remove that cap, you'll attach your sewage line, run it to the sewer, and then you'll be free to pull the handles. I always recommend pulling the black tank handle first, and then following it with the gray tank and then the galley tank. So here on the back, you have a storage compartment. This is just strictly a storage compartment. You have your exterior shower here with, does have the option for hot and cold water. Obviously, you'll have to have that water heater turned on and water up to temperature to be able to get hot water out of that. You have your 30 amp shore power receptacle and shore power cord. This cord does come with the unit. That is your cord. You have the access door to your water heater. To open this, you'll just flip this tab up. You'll turn it 90 degrees. And then you can pull open on this door. It's a little hard with one hand. It does have these little tabs down there and these little holes in the door that it sits on. So inside here, you have your drain port, and this here is your anode rod, and it also acts as your drain plug. So what this rod does is it collects any sediment and deteriorates the rod rather than damaging the tank. So you always want to make sure you have a clean, good anode rod in here. Over time it will start to deteriorate and look rather funny. When you see that, it is time to replace it. But when it comes time to use this, you'll just make sure you insert the anode rod, and then you'll tighten that down. You'll make sure that's snugged up, and then you're now able to fill this tank with water and then turn it on. You always want to make sure you fill it with water first before you turn it on. So this is a gas or electric water heater. The electric element is going to be controlled down here. If you turn that on, you will have to use the switch on the inside to actually turn that on. So don't worry about it. You can just make sure you can basically leave that in the on position and then control it from the controls on the inside, which I'll get to here in a minute. If you ever turn this thing on and it gets running too hot, or it runs too low on water and gets too hot and hits the thermal cutoff, you can push these, which will reset that thermal cutoff. Hopefully no damage has occurred if that ever happens. But you just be able to reset that and then try it again. And last but not least, if you ever want to remove that drain plug once there's water in this tank, this up here is a pressure relief valve. You'll open that up. Once that stops dumping water out of it, you've now relieved the pressure in the tank, and you can safely remove that drain plug. Always make sure before you remove that drain plug, you do relieve the pressure in the tank, so we don't want nobody getting hurt. All right, so right here is your water hookups, your black tank flush, and then you do have the option for a cable TV hookup or the remote satellite dish hookup. And these are going to be inlets for both of those. So that way, if you were to hook either of those to that, You can use all the coax on the inside rather than having on a separate line of cable to each TV. So you have two different options when it comes time to use water in this. You can take your clean drinking water hose and insert it in the port here for the freshwater and fill the freshwater tank. There is a tank reader on the inside, so you can check that tank level so you don't overfill that tank. If you use this option here, you will have to turn on your water pump in order to use any of your faucets or use the toilet or the shower. And then also, when you fill your fresh tank and you turn your water pump on, if your water heater is empty, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to pump that water tank full, so that way you can safely start heating that water. Or you can use the city water connection here, which the hose that you would use to fill that fresh tank, you just thread directly onto this port right here. And then again, if the water tank is empty, if that water heater tank is empty, the first thing it's going to do when you hook up is fill that tank. And once that tank's full, it's going to pressurize all your lines, allowing you to use any faucet or the toilet or anything like that, just like you would in your home, with the pressure coming from that hose. And then the other port you see here is your black tank flush. That's going to operate the same as the city water over here. Just thread a clean water hose on it. And when you're up there in the front, dumping those tanks, when you have that black tank valve open, you can take that clean water hose, hook it here, let that run for a short period of time, which will just help pump that clean, fresh water through that tank, which will help clear that tank of any debris or anything stuck in any nook and cranny in that tank. On the back here, you do have this little rack, storage rack here on the back. It is capable of holding up to 200 pounds. To operate it, there's a pin on the other side and the same as on this side. You would pull this cotter key out right here, which will release this pin. You'll pull that pin out, allowing this to fold down so that this hole here matches the hole in the back. Then you can safely reinstall this pin back in that same port there, put that cotter key back on it, and now it'll be in the down position, and you can store up to 200 pounds on that. This is a full-size spare, can go on any of the 4 hubs on the trailer. It does have this Alpha Wolf tire cover on it. You just pull that off there and remove that and install it on one of the hubs if you ever get a flat tire. And this also is equipped with the pre-wire kit for the rear camera, which would be installed on the back here, and then there would be a monitor for your truck, so that way you'd have full-time rear view access to the back of this trailer. Underneath this compartment here is your little exterior kitchen area, where you do have an ice maker, a 12 volt, not 12 volt, a 120 volt mini refrigerator, and then this cooktop and quick connect hose. So the cooktop, you will have to use a lighter to ignite these, and then you would control the temperature here with the knobs as well as lighting it. There is a gas line back here. Right now we just have it kind of tucked up here. You would feed that down and then come underneath here, and you see that little blue cap right there. It's a quick connect fitting for that LP line. It'll plug right in there, allowing you to use the gas from the front of the trailer all the way back here at this cooktop out here. When it comes time to close this, there is this little red lock on here. So just make sure you hold that up when you push that in, and then you can safely put that back away for storage and get this compartment closed back up. The water port for that blue hose in there is right here. If you're hooked to city water, you'll be able to just use that hose at will. If you are using from your fresh tank, you will have to turn the water pump on, and then you can use that hose. One thing I forgot to show you was the drain for the fresh tank. So if you look up underneath here, you can see that right there is a little drain. Actually, I'll walk over to the other side because you can actually see the handle. So if you ever fill that fresh tank and you want to drain it, you just come over here and you'll pull that white handle, which will evacuate all the water in the tank, leaving that tank dry for you. That black vent you see up there is the exhaust vent for the hood over the cooktop on the inside. This silver port you see right here is the exhaust for your furnace. Just keep in mind that when the furnace is running, the gas coming out of there will be quite warm. So if you have a table or something set up, you don't want to make sure you leave it on in front of it if you are going to run the furnace. And then over here you have your 2 exterior speakers. You have a 110 outlet here that is GFI protected. Then you do have the satellite and cable hookup from the outgoing hookup from the ingoing on the other side, as well as a TV mount here. So you can mount your TV out here. I wouldn't recommend leaving it outside, but you can mount it out here, so that way you can watch your the big game or something outside. So the front door here has the same steps as the rear. This is what they look like when they are in the out position. And we're going to go inside the back door, and I'll show you how to open those steps from the closed position. So this grab handle just picks up, folds over, and does lock in place. You'll open the door, make sure it's all the way open. And then these steps are held in by this little ear right here that clips on that tab. You'll pull the blue handle, which releases it. Put a hand on this handle up here, and then you can now pull the steps down. Be careful, there is no gas shock or spring on these, so you will have to make sure you have a hand on them at all times. They will just fall to the ground if you let go of them. The feet are adjustable. If you see this little pin right here, it just pushes out of there, and then you can select any of these holes on the legs. Same thing for both sides. You always want to make sure that this part of the step right here is as flush as it can be with this right here. So you don't want much of a gap at all. The reason that is the clearance between this part of the step and the bottom of your entry door. If you put these steps out and they're sitting up too high, see how there's no clearance right there? You will damage the steps and the door. So make sure that once you get those steps out, that you have those feet adjusted so that the panel here, this black panel, sits nice and tight against this aluminum panel right there. So onto the inside here. First things first, we will open up the awning. So the control for the awning is going to be right here, this switch right here. Hold that button down, it pushes that awning out. Now, these awnings do not have a stop, so you have to watch while you extend the awning. So once the flap comes down and you can see the bare awning tube, you'll know you've reached full extension. So just like that, right like that, you've now reached full extension on the awning. There is a switch for an awning light, which is the outside LED. And then there's this dimmer switch here, which if you look, actually dims the lights on that awning arm there. Zoom in a little bit on it so you can see a little better. You can control the light right there from this dimmer switch. And then you can adjust the pitch of these awning arms right here with this little adjustment knob right here. It's kind of hard to do with one hand, so I'm not going to be able to show you, but you would just make sure this is loose. You can push that in or pull it out depending on how much pitch you want, so you can either angle this up or angle it down. See, right now it's all the way in, then you can push it all the way up, which will push that awning up, or pull it down, and just make sure you snug that up wherever you like it, so that way it doesn't fall down on you. And you always want to make sure that they're both in the same position, either all the way out or all the way in when you do close the awning. That way it doesn't bind up and cause any damage. So on this panel, you also have your slide out control, which we will open the slide out now. All right, that's fully extended. So you also have the controls for the lights in the kitchen area, the living area, as well as the interior blue LED above the slide. You have your water pump. You turn that water pump on right here. And earlier I misspoke about the water heater. So the water heater, you do only have one control. So if you want to run that water heater on electric, you'll have to go outside, have that electric element in the on position. Then you'll come in here, you'll turn that water heater on, it'll run on electric. If you go out there and turn off that electric element outside at the water heater, and you turn this switch on, it's gonna run on propane. So sorry, I misspoke about that earlier in the video. That's the way you're gonna have to do it if you wanna operate it on either gas or electric. And then you do have your tank readers right here. So these buttons right here, you'll push those, and on this gauge right here, you'll be able to see the level of the tank. Right now, since we're plugged in, that shore power is charging the battery, so it should read full. And then the fresh tank, and then black tank all the way through. This one does only have one black tank. This is a generic panel, so disregard the black tank 2. That is not going to apply to this unit, but the gray tank 1 and gray tank 2 do apply, because you do have that gray tank and the galley tank. On the opposite side of the wall here, you have the pre-wire one control hotspot. That's something you can add on aftermarket if you'd like to. And then you do have your air excel thermostat. So to operate this thermostat, right now I have the AC turned on, the temperature set at 50 degrees. And you can see the fan speed right here. You push it one time, it's now, I can switch it to heat, which would turn the furnace on. All the way off is off. I can have the fan speed on low, fan speed on high, and then I can have the cooling on high, low, or auto low, or auto high. I recommend leaving it in the auto high position, and it will start to get the unit cool. I haven't had it on very long, that's why the temperature is still so high in here. And then again, one more press, and that will turn the furnace on, and then you can adjust temperature with the 2 arrows. So this back bedroom has this sliding door. You just release this little tab here, pull it off, that door will slide closed. Back here you do have some storage, some lights underneath, as well as lights in the ceiling. They are all just push button lights in the middle, so you have to push that button here in the middle, which will turn that light on or off. And then you do have an area to mount a small TV, so you can hook it up there and use the antenna or a part cable, whichever you have hooked up there. With some storage cabinets, and then there is some storage underneath the bed here as well. You just pick up on the mattress and that piece of wood there, which will raise it up. There's a gas shock, so it is kind of assisted. This is an emergency exit window, so in case of emergency, you would be able to pull that red pin, which would remove the screen, fold that red arm down, and push that window open to get out in case of emergency. So your dinette here folds down into a sleeping area. It has storage underneath each bench as well. So this table is just a pressure fitting. These 2 tubes here just push into the cups on each side. To remove it, you just simply pick up on it. It is a pressure fitting, so it might take a little bit of force to pull up on it. The legs might stick to the table or might stay on the floor. It just depends. But once you get the table off there, you'll remove those 2 legs. Either put them in the storage underneath or store them underneath the table here. And then the table will actually come down and rest right here on these little blocks you see. And then you can rearrange the cushions. That way you turn this dinette into a sleeping area. And then the couch here also is a sleeping area. You'll just pick up on the front of the couch, which will allow it to open all the way up and become a sleeping area. So your blinds here, you just have these little tabs on them. You'll pull them down, and then you can adjust how you'd like those to be set by simply releasing it. They're all going to be the same, except for the blind above the sink here, which will have these little travel tabs that you will lock in place on each side. Again, it's kind of hard to do with one hand, but you will lock those in place if you want them to stay down, or you can pull all the way up and travel it with it in the all the way up position. It just has the drawstring like your standard style blinds. Your radio here does have the 2 zones, so you can control interior or exterior speakers. You can kind of get that set up. There is an owner's manual included, so that you can read on this and kind of get all your preferences and everything set up that way. The microwave is going to be your standard style microwave. That should be pretty self-explanatory. You do have a light and a fan for the cooktop here. So the cooktop has this nice travel cover. It just is held in with these little rubber ears right here. They just push in place. So when you want to use it, you'll just flip it up, gently set it down because it is glass, and flip it up one more time, allowing for you to access the cooktop here. You do have the electronic spark igniter right here. You'll turn that, and if you see, it will, those little igniters there will spark, allowing you to light the gas up here. You will have to turn the knob to the high position to allow gas to start flowing through it. Then you can turn the igniter to ignite the corresponding burner. And the same thing for the pilot here. You'll be able to turn that to the flame position, which will allow you to light the pilot. It has this nice farm sink in it with this sink cover, which adds you some extra countertop space. And then it does have the sink here with the wand style end on it. That panel you see down there, that one right there, that is your fuse box / breaker box. So in here you have all your fuses and all your breakers. So if you ever trip something or something blow a fuse, you can access it all right here. This black cover is the interior access to your furnace, and then all the black vents you see on the floor, those are actually going to be for the furnace. So that's where all your heat's going to come from, is the black vents on the floor, and then your AC comes from the white vents in the ceiling. Or if you open up these little doors on the AC here, it allows the AC to dump the air directly from the unit. But if you close it up, it will duct that air throughout the ceiling. That way the front bedroom and the bathroom up there will also begin to get cold. There are 2 different filters in here. You have to pull these tabs, releasing this cover, then you can wash out those filters. You have to do that periodically, so they need to be replaced, and then replace them. You have a 12-volt refrigerator. It does have 10 cubic feet of storage here, which is pretty large. It has these little levers you push down to open them, which is pretty neat. And you do have your temperature setting right up there. Have the nice oversized pantry with the push button light there in the middle. This here is the location you would mount your main TV. This mount here is the other side of that mount that's on the outside, so you can mount that TV here and then take it inside or outside. All your hookups are going to be right here. And then this little button you see right here is to turn the antenna on or off. You turn that antenna on, you'll be able to pick up some local channels. You will have to auto program your TV, but that's pretty simple. As long as you have that on there, you will get some local channels. This little thing you see here is your LP and carbon monoxide detector. That thing's gonna run constantly off that 12-volt battery in the front. So I recommend, if you're gonna store this thing, make sure you disconnect that battery so that thing doesn't drain your battery. If you ever hear that thing chirping, like a real slow chirp, every 5-10 minutes. That means the battery voltage is getting low. If it's more rapid, that means you actually have some sort of leak and you need to address that. So for the bathroom, your toilet has a foot pedal. The shower does have the nice skylight, which brightens it up and adds a little extra headroom up there. Your main GFI is located here in the bathroom. If you ever trip that, you just reset it here. And then you do have this exhaust fan up here. Controls for the fan and for fan speed are here. And then to open and close that vent, you do this, turn that knob right there. Then last but not least, we do have the front bedroom here. In the front bedroom, you do have some nice storage, as well as in each cabinet, you do have these little hangers, so you can hang some clothing, another emergency exit window, as well as USB and 110 outlets. And then there is more storage, again, underneath the bed here, same as the rear bed. And then you do have a location to mount a TV if you'd like to mount a TV in here with the hookups right above. And that will conclude this walk on this 2021 Alpha Wolf.